Hey there, and welcome to today's video. 40 minutes of Am I the Asshole stories with an emphasis on one of the juiciest topics out there, boundaries. We all know that boundaries are a crucial part of relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or even strangers. But what happens when those boundaries get crossed? Well, that's when things get really interesting. These stories dive deep into situations where lines were drawn and broken, leaving behind some pretty wild consequences. If you're looking for something to listen to while taking a walk, working out, commuting, or even just relaxing before bed, this compilation is perfect for you. You can sit back and enjoy these relatable, frustrating, and sometimes hilarious stories about people dealing with boundary pushers and the chaos that follows. Who knows? You might even recognize some of your own life in these stories, or get some ideas on how to set your own limits. So let's dive in and see who's in the wrong this time.
Sometimes you have to take drastic measures to protect your privacy. Am I wrong for locking my closet to keep my mother out? So I recently installed a lock on my closet in my apartment. It's not that I'm hiding anything crazy, just personal stuff I don't want anyone snooping through. I've always been pretty private, especially because of how I grew up. My mom has never respected my boundaries, and when I was younger, it was even worse. I remember vividly how she would read my diary, go through my school notebooks, and even snoop through notes that my friends passed to me during class. She always had the same excuse: as long as you live under my roof, you have no expectation of privacy. That was the kind of household I grew up in, so it's no surprise that now, as an adult, I've become extra protective of my personal space. I love my mom, but I don't trust her not to pry into my business, especially when I'm not home. That's why I installed the lock. In the closet, I keep things like my journals, medical correspondence, and even birthday cards. Basically, anything personal that I don't want my mom or anyone else to see when they visit. Recently, she came over to stay for a weekend visit. I had to go into work one day, so I left her in my apartment, and when I got back, she was seething mad. She demanded to know why she couldn't get into my closet. I asked her why she needed to be in my closet in the first place, and she couldn't even give me a real answer. "I don't know," she said. That response only confirmed what I already knew. She had absolutely no reason to be in there other than to snoop around. I calmly explained to her that the closet was locked because I keep private things in there, and she didn't need to be going through my stuff. She acted like I had personally insulted her, telling me I was being secretive and making a big deal out of nothing. But honestly, this isn't the first time she's crossed the line. Let me give you a few examples of why I'm so guarded around her. When I was about 14, I came home one day to find my mom sitting on my bed with my diary in her hands. She had gone through it and read everything, including my teenage crushes and deepest insecurities. When I got upset, she told me I shouldn't be writing things down if I didn't want people to know. A few years ago, I had just gotten back from a trip and left my purse in the living room while I unpacked. I went into the kitchen for a second, and when I came back, I found my mom rifling through my purse. When I asked what she was doing, she claimed she was just looking for gum, but she had already pulled out my wallet, receipts, and even my medication bottle. This one really ticked me off. When I was still living at home after college, I got some important medical bills in the mail. Before I could even check the mail myself, my mom had already opened the envelopes and read everything. She then sat me down to discuss my health like I was still a child. Because of all this, I've learned to protect my privacy, especially when it comes to my mom. It's not that I don't want a relationship with her, but I do need to set boundaries. The lock on the closet is one of them. I thought it was a reasonable solution, but now she's acting like I've betrayed her by not trusting her with every aspect of my life. Am I the asshole for locking my closet and keeping my personal things private, or is she the one crossing boundaries here? Sometimes you have to blame the people who are actually wrong. Am I wrong for not punishing my son for cursing at his younger cousins? I, a 45-year-old woman, have a 17-year-old son, Michael. Last weekend, we were at a family gathering and things got a little tense. My sister's kids, Emma, who is 12, and Jake, who is 10, have always been the type to push boundaries. They're energetic, and while they can be sweet, they tend to get overbearing, especially when it comes to Michael. During the party, Michael was minding his own business, sitting on the couch, when Emma and Jake started poking, tickling, and prodding him. They thought it was funny, but Michael was clearly uncomfortable. He asked them, politely at first, to stop. He told them multiple times to knock it off, but they just wouldn't listen. I was in the kitchen when this started, so I didn't see it right away. Eventually, Michael had enough and snapped, yelling, "Get the fuck away from me!" Afterward, my mother and my sister pulled me aside and told me they hoped I was going to adequately punish Michael for his outburst. They were upset that he used foul language in front of the younger kids, claiming he should know better since he's older and should be setting a good example. But honestly, if anything, I wanted to take him out for ice cream. This wasn't an isolated incident. Emma and Jake have always been over the top with Michael, and this is just the latest example of them pushing his buttons. Here are 3 other times they crossed a line. Last Christmas, they decided it would be hilarious to throw snowballs at Michael while he was inside the house, relaxing by the window. They kept pelting the glass, even after he asked them to stop. Michael finally told them to cut it out, but they just laughed and kept going. My sister brushed it off as kids being kids. At a summer barbecue, they sprayed him with water guns when he wasn't in the mood. He was sitting outside, enjoying the sun, and they ran up, doused him, and kept laughing about it. He told them off that time too, and again, no one stepped in to stop them. During a family game night, they thought it would be funny to gang up on him in every round, ruining the experience for everyone. They kept sabotaging him and ignored all his attempts to ask them to play fairly. Their parents laughed it off and did nothing to rein them in. Every time these incidents happened, I tried to intervene. But it's clear their parents have no intention of disciplining them. I've always been big on teaching Michael about body autonomy and respecting other people's personal space. I don't believe in forcing kids to endure behavior that makes them uncomfortable, and that includes being physically harassed, even if it's by family. Just because someone's younger or a relative doesn't mean they're entitled to disrespect another person's boundaries. Michael tried asking nicely, multiple times, but they didn't listen, and I don't blame him for snapping. If anything, I think he showed great restraint by not pushing them away or reacting physically. He expressed his discomfort verbally, and while the language wasn't ideal, the message needed to be loud and clear. Stop invading my space. I don't think Michael should be punished for protecting his personal boundaries, and I certainly don't think I should force him to apologize for defending himself. It's not like he screamed at them out of the blue. They ignored him repeatedly and disrespected his space. At 17, Michael's learning the importance of standing up for himself, and I'm not going to undermine that by punishing him for a justified outburst. So, am I wrong for not punishing my son and, if anything, supporting his decision to stand up for his boundaries?
Sometimes being neighborly can bite you in the butt. Am I wrong for setting up my neighbor after he kept taking my gas without asking? I, a 35-year-old male, have a neighbor, Jack, who is in his 40s, and he has absolutely no sense of boundaries when it comes to borrowing things. I don't mind lending out tools or equipment from time to time, but there are some basic rules I expect to be followed. Let me know when you take something, let me know when you'll return it, and make sure it comes back in the same condition it was in before you borrowed it. Over the past year, Jack has borrowed several things without asking, which has really started to get on my nerves. For example, lawnmower gas. I keep a can of unleaded gas for my lawnmower because the nearest gas station is about 10 miles away. Jack has taken my gas multiple times without asking and not replaced it. This is the one that's caused the most inconvenience because I rely on that gas for my mower. Last summer he borrowed my complete tool set for a weekend project. He returned it a week later and it was filthy and missing a few pieces. When I confronted him about it, he shrugged it off as no big deal. He took my heavy-duty extension cord for a project and didn't bother to tell me. I only found out it was missing when I needed it for a repair job and had to search for a replacement. Most recently, Jack has been using my gas again. I specifically told him that if he uses any of the gas from my red can, he needs to replace it within 48 hours. When he didn't do so, I told him not to take the gas anymore. I set this clear boundary to avoid further issues. Despite my clear instructions, the last few times I went to use my gas, I found the can empty. Frustrated, I decided to take a different approach. I filled the can with diesel fuel instead of unleaded. A few days later, Jack came over, asking if I could help him with his mower because it wouldn't start. I asked him if he had used gas from the red can, and he admitted he had, saying, "Well, yes, but I didn't think you'd mind." I then explained that I had filled the can with diesel and that the other can is now for unleaded fuel. Jack was not pleased, but I felt that my actions were justified given his repeated disregard for my boundaries. So, am I wrong for setting up Jack by filling the can with diesel after he repeatedly took my gas without permission? Was my reaction justified, or did I go too far?
Sometimes a hug is more than just a hug. Am I wrong for not wanting to go to my parents' 50th anniversary party because of a creepy family friend? I, a 30-year-old woman, have been feeling conflicted about something, and I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or justified. My parents are about to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, and they're planning a huge party. It's supposed to be this wonderful event, and honestly, I should be happy for them. 50 years together is a big deal, and they've worked hard to put this party together. The problem is, I don't want to go because of him. He's a family friend who has been around since I was little. Let's call him Tom. Growing up, I always felt weird around Tom, but I didn't understand why until I got older. He never did anything explicitly harmful, but he had this habit of hugging me too tightly and for too long. You know how some people give hugs and it's friendly and quick? Well, not Tom. His hugs always felt suffocating, and he'd hold on just a little too long. Even when I tried to pull away, he'd keep his grip, rubbing my back or even brushing my hair out of my face afterward. It was always so uncomfortable. When I was younger, I didn't know how to say anything to my parents. I just figured that maybe I was overreacting or being too sensitive. After all, he was their friend, and everyone else seemed to think he was great. I did mention to them a few times that I didn't like his hugs, and they just laugh it off and say, "Oh, that's just how Tom is. He's a hugger." As I got older, I started avoiding him at family gatherings. If I saw him coming toward me, I'd make an excuse to leave the room, or I'd be sure to have something in my hands so he wouldn't have the opportunity to grab me for one of his hugs. But my parents never took me seriously when I'd complain. It was always brushed off as me being dramatic or antisocial. Now, all these years later, my parents are having this big anniversary party, and of course, Tom is invited. I already know how it's going to go if I attend. He'll try to hug me as soon as I walk through the door, and I'll feel trapped all night, trying to avoid him while pretending everything is fine. The thought of it is giving me so much anxiety, and I'm starting to feel like I just can't do it. When I told my parents that I didn't want to come because of Tom, they were upset. They said I was blowing things out of proportion, and that it's just one night and a few hugs. They even accused me of trying to ruin their celebration with something that happened years ago. But the thing is, it's not just the past. Every time I've seen Tom at family events, he does the same thing. It's not a memory. It's something I still have to deal with when I see him. I'm torn because I don't want to disappoint my parents or make them feel like I'm not supporting them on their special day. But I also don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm uncomfortable the entire night, just to keep the peace. My parents don't see anything wrong with Tom's behavior, but to me it feels invasive and creepy, and I don't think I should have to subject myself to that just to make them happy. So, am I wrong for not wanting to go to my parents' anniversary party because I'm uncomfortable with a family friend who hugs me too much? Am I overreacting? Or do I have the right to protect my own boundaries, even if it means missing their big day?
Sometimes personal boundaries are more important than anyone else's feelings. Am I wrong for letting my daughters choose who they do and don't hug? I, a 32-year-old mother, have two daughters, Sophie, who is 5, and Hannah, who is 7. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about personal boundaries, especially when it comes to teaching my girls that they have a right to control their own bodies. I want them to feel empowered to decide who they're comfortable with, even when it comes to simple things like hugs. I know not everyone shares my view, but I didn't realize how much of a clash this would cause until our last family gathering. Hannah recently told me that she feels uncomfortable hugging a certain uncle at family events. To be honest, this uncle has always set off my own creepometer too. Nothing overtly wrong, but just something about the way he acts always made me uneasy. So, when she expressed this to me, I completely supported her decision. I told both my girls that they never have to hug anyone if they don't want to, and that I'd always back them up. They could offer a high five or wave instead, and that would be fine. Well, the first time Hannah declined to hug this uncle and Sophie followed suit, the room got awkward fast. I could see the hurt look on his face, but I wasn't going to make them do something they didn't want to do just to spare his feelings. I told them it was okay, and we moved on. Afterward, my mom pulled me aside and told me it was terribly rude. She said it was just a hug and wouldn't kill Hannah to go along with it. It's better than offending him, she said. I don't agree, it's not better. I don't think it's ever better to force my girls to go against their own comfort levels, even for something as seemingly harmless as a hug. My mom insists I'm overreacting and teaching them to be impolite. I get that for some, especially older generations, things like this are no big deal. But to me, teaching my girls they have autonomy over their bodies is more important than sparing someone's feelings. I don't want them to grow up feeling like they owe anyone physical affection just to avoid being rude. Am I wrong for letting my daughters decide who they hug and expecting the family to respect that? Should I make them hug their uncle for the sake of family harmony, or am I right to back them up? Update. Am I wrong for letting my daughters choose who they do and don't hug? I never expected the kind of response I got after standing up for my girls. If anything, I was ready for more awkward family moments and disapproving looks. But something surprising happened. After our last family gathering, where Hannah and Sophie chose not to hug the uncle in question, I received a message from my cousin Sarah, who's 34. I wasn't sure what to expect, maybe more criticism or advice on keeping the peace, but instead, she thanked me. Sarah told me that watching me support my daughters had been a huge eye-opener for her. She said, I've always felt uncomfortable around that uncle too. His lingering touches and overly long hugs always gave me the creeps, even when I was little. I never felt like I could say anything because no one else seemed to think it was a big deal. She confessed that it made her feel trapped in those moments, like her discomfort didn't matter. Seeing me stand up for Hannah and Sophie's right to say no gave her the courage to start doing the same for her own kids. I've already told my daughter that she doesn't have to hug anyone if she doesn't want to, Sarah said. I wish someone had stood up for me when I was younger to remind me that my feelings were just as important as his need to hug people who didn't want hugs. Hearing this from Sarah brought a lot of clarity and made me even more sure I'm doing the right thing. It's not just about the hugs, it's about teaching our girls that their boundaries matter, even if others don't understand. Sometimes, standing up for something small can have a ripple effect you never see coming. I told Sarah I was proud of her for making that change, and that we need to look out for each other in these situations. I feel so much more confident knowing that I'm not the only one who has felt this way, and I'm glad I can show my daughters that they don't owe anyone their physical comfort. So to answer the question, no, I'm not wrong. If anything, I'm even more sure that I'm doing the right thing, and I'll keep backing my girls up, no matter how awkward it gets at family parties.
Sometimes you get blessed with a wonderful mother-in-law. Then others, you get someone like Jake's mother. Am I wrong for refusing to let my mother-in-law in the delivery room? I've been married to my husband Jake for 5 years, and we're expecting our first child. I love Jake deeply, but my relationship with his mother, let's just say, leaves a lot to be desired. She has this knack for crossing boundaries, and it's been a constant struggle since the day we got engaged. 3 key moments come to mind where she overstepped. The nursery incident. We'd carefully planned out our baby's nursery, painting it a lovely shade of soft green. One afternoon, while Jake and I were out shopping for baby furniture, she popped over to help, and when we returned, she had repainted the entire room pink, saying, "It's what the baby will like better." I was furious but tried to keep the peace. Jake tried to reason with her, but she didn't see the issue. The name drama. When we announced that we'd chosen a name for our daughter, she outright complained. "Why would you name her that? She'll be teased for the rest of her life." It wasn't even a strange or unusual name, just not to her taste. She even went so far as to suggest we think it over and offered up alternatives that were more to her liking. We stuck with our choice, but she still throws in the occasional snide comment about it. The diaper disaster. At my baby shower, we received a ton of gifts, including several boxes of diapers from friends and family. A few days later, I found out she had donated every single box and replaced them with cloth diapers because these are better for the environment and you should care about that. While I get that cloth diapers are great for some people, it wasn't what we planned, and she had no right to make that decision for us. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I'm weeks away from giving birth, and guess who shows up at our house with a brand new video camera? My mother-in-law gleefully announced that she was ready to film the birth for posterity. I shut that down immediately, telling her there would be no cameras and that she wasn't invited into the delivery room. She threw a massive fit, claiming it was her right to witness her grandchild being born. On the day of delivery, Jake and I headed to the hospital. Before we left, I made it crystal clear that when the baby arrived, we would call and let them know when they could visit. That didn't stop her. While I was in the middle of labor, my husband called his mom to give her an update. Somehow she took that as an invitation to come straight to the hospital and camp out in the waiting room with her husband. As I started pushing, the last thing I expected was to see her bursting into the room. She and her husband lied to the nurses, saying they had permission to be in there. I couldn't believe my eyes when they both walked in, camera in hand, trying to film the moment. In between breaths and contractions, I screamed, "Get them out!" But in the chaos, no one acted right away. They stood there like I wasn't in the middle of one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Finally, a nurse jumped into action, but it took 4 security officers to bodily remove them from the room. By then, I was in tears, completely stressed out. After the birth, my husband was mortified, and my MIL has been playing the victim, claiming I was cruel for not letting her witness the birth of her grandchild. She insists that it's her right as a grandmother, and even some family members have suggested I was too harsh. So am I the asshole for not letting her in the room and having her removed when she barged in?
Sometimes you have to set clear boundaries to protect yourself. Am I wrong for giving my girlfriend an ultimatum after she sent a revealing photo to a male friend? I, a 28-year-old man, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Emily, who is 27 for the past 2 years. We have a good relationship and I trust her, but recently something happened that has really shaken me. Last weekend, Emily and I went to a party together. We had a great time, but by the end of the night, she was quite drunk. When it was time to head home, I offered to carry her phone inside for her since she was having trouble managing her things. On the way inside, her phone dinged with a new message notification, so I glanced at the screen. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was a selfie Emily had sent to a male friend, John, who is 30. In the photo, she was clearly having a wardrobe malfunction. Half of her boob was out, and her nipple was visible. John's response to the photo was, "You just made my day." I was shocked and felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I had always known that Emily and John were friends, but I didn't expect her to send something so explicit to him, especially when she was in a relationship with me. The photo and John's reaction made me question the boundaries in their friendship. When we got inside, I confronted Emily about the photo and her communication with John. She seemed embarrassed and tried to explain that it was a drunken mistake and that she didn't mean to be disrespectful. However, I felt that sending such a photo crossed a significant boundary, and John's response was unsettling. I gave Emily an ultimatum: either she stops talking to John completely, or I would leave the relationship. I felt that maintaining contact with John after this incident was unacceptable, and that setting this boundary was necessary for the health of our relationship. Emily was hurt and upset by my ultimatum. She argued that she had been drunk and didn't realize the full impact of her actions. She also claimed that she valued John's friendship and didn't want to cut him off because of a mistake she made while intoxicated. To make matters more complicated, Emily pointed out that I had never previously expressed concerns about her friendships, and she felt like my reaction was overly harsh. She said she didn't expect such an ultimatum and felt that it was unfair to judge her entire friendship with John based on one mistake. I'm torn because while I believe sending that photo was a serious breach of trust, I also understand that Emily was drunk and may have acted recklessly. I'm questioning whether my response was too extreme and if I should have approached the situation differently. So, am I wrong for giving my girlfriend an ultimatum to cut off her male friend after she sent him a revealing photo and he responded inappropriately? Did I overreact, or was setting this boundary justified given the situation?
Some moms are excellent button pushers. Am I wrong for being offended that my mom cleaned my house while I was in the hospital? I, a 28-year-old woman, was in the hospital for a week due to a health scare. Thankfully, everything is okay now, but when I got home, I was hit with a shock I wasn't expecting. My mom, who is 55 years old, had gone through my entire house, cleaning, reorganizing, and essentially rearranging my entire life. The kicker, she didn't even have a key to my place. She stole it from my sister, who has a spare for actual emergencies, not for my mom to play housemaid while I'm out of commission. Now, I know some people might be thinking, hey, at least she cleaned your house. Be grateful, but it's not that simple. My mom is notorious for crossing boundaries, and this isn't the first time she's overstepped. 3 major examples. A few years ago, she visited me after I'd just moved into a new apartment. While I was out running errands, she decided my furniture arrangement wasn't functional enough. I came back to find my entire living room changed, and when I expressed frustration, she brushed it off saying, "I just made it better." She once took it upon herself to go through my closet and donate a bunch of my clothes because they weren't flattering enough for my figure. Without asking me, she replaced them with outfits she thought suited me better. I was devastated, especially because some of the clothes she got rid of had sentimental value. I keep a calendar on my fridge with my plans, work schedule, and reminders. During one visit, she decided to optimize my week by erasing and rewriting everything. She rearranged my appointments and scheduled things she thought I should be doing instead, like lunch with her or gym time. I was livid. So when I came home from the hospital, I didn't feel relief that my home was clean. I felt violated. My space, my safe haven, had been invaded. She went through my personal belongings, threw out items she deemed unnecessary, and rearranged my cabinets, closets, and even my desk. Everything was out of place, and it didn't feel like my home anymore. I have a system for how I like my things, and now I can't find anything because my mom decided her way was better. The worst part? She touched my personal items. I have a drawer where I keep sentimental items, cards, letters, little trinkets, and she moved everything. It's a deeply private space for me, and knowing she went through it makes me feel sick. When I confronted her, she defended herself, saying, "I just wanted to help. Your house was a mess, and I couldn't leave it like that." But it wasn't her place to decide. She never even asked, and stealing the key from my sister feels like such a massive betrayal of trust. Now my mom is upset because I'm not grateful for her help, and my sister says I'm being too sensitive because mom was just trying to be supportive while I was recovering. But I feel like my boundaries were stomped on once again. Am I the asshole for being upset that my mom cleaned and reorganized my home while I was in the hospital? Or am I justified in feeling like my personal space was completely violated? Every friendship has boundaries that should not be crossed, even those concerning children. Am I wrong for not inviting my friend to a cookout because her son has no boundaries around my kids? I, a 36-year-old woman, have a close friend, Sarah, who is 34. We've known each other for years. We've shared countless memories, supported each other through thick and thin, and our kids have grown up alongside one another. But lately, I've had a hard time spending time with her because of her 7-year-old son, Ethan. Don't get me wrong, he's a sweet kid, but he has absolutely no boundaries when it comes to interacting with my children, and Sarah does nothing to intervene. I have 2 kids, Sophie, who is 8, and Liam, who is 6. While they love hanging out with friends, Ethan's behavior has made them dread gatherings where he's present. For our last cookout, I decided not to invite Sarah and Ethan, and now Sarah is upset with me. She found out about it from another friend, and she's been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. So now I'm wondering if I was wrong for not including them. Here's why I made that decision. Every time we've gotten together, Ethan has been completely overwhelming for my kids, and Sarah just lets him do whatever he wants. I always end up being the one to step in and manage the situation, which leaves me stressed and unable to enjoy the time with my friends. Here are just 5 examples of Ethan's behavior. He gets way too physical. At the last playdate, he kept pushing and hugging my kids, even after they asked him to stop. Sophie is not a fan of rough play, and Ethan wouldn't let her go until she physically had to push him off. Sarah? She was too busy chatting to even notice, and when I mentioned it, she just laughed and said, "Oh, he's just being affectionate." He's always screaming. I don't mean loud talking, I mean full-on yelling in my kids' faces. He thinks it's funny to startle them, but my son, Liam, is really sensitive to loud noises. He covers his ears and runs to me every time Ethan does it. It doesn't matter how many times I tell Ethan to tone it down, Sarah shrugs it off, saying, "Boys will be boys." He doesn't respect personal space. Ethan is always in Sophie's face, grabbing her toys or pulling at her clothes. She's told him multiple times she doesn't like it, but he ignores her. I've seen her go from excited to withdrawn in the span of minutes because she can't handle his constant invasion of her space. He ruins their games. Every time the kids start playing a game, Ethan barges in and takes control. He doesn't ask to join. He just dominates the play, changes the rules, and makes it all about him. When Liam or Sophie try to assert themselves, he throws a tantrum. Sarah either doesn't notice or waves it off, saying, "They'll figure it out." He's always touching their food. At our last picnic, Ethan thought it would be fun to stick his hands into everyone's plates, grabbing food without asking. My kids are pretty particular about their food, and this totally grossed them out. I asked Sarah to talk to him about it, but she just said kids are messy eaters and moved on. After so many experiences like this, my kids started dreading any event where Ethan would be present. Sophie has started hiding when he comes over, and Liam clings to me, asking when they can leave. It breaks my heart to see them so uncomfortable in their own home, and I hate feeling like I have to be on high alert every time Sarah and Ethan are around. So, when we decided to have a cookout last weekend, I made the decision not to invite Sarah and Ethan. I just wanted my kids to have a relaxing day, where they could run around and play without being constantly harassed. It wasn't about excluding Sarah. It was about protecting my kids' experience. Of course, Sarah found out about the cookout through a mutual friend, and now she's upset that I didn't invite them. She hasn't directly confronted me yet, but she's been passive-aggressively making comments on social media, and I've heard through the grapevine that she's really hurt. I know Ethan isn't trying to be malicious, but his lack of boundaries makes it impossible for my kids to enjoy themselves when he's around. Sarah's refusal to step in has only made things worse. I feel like I'm constantly stuck between being a good friend to Sarah and protecting my kids from an environment that makes them uncomfortable. So, am I wrong for not inviting my friend and her son to the cookout? Should I have talked to Sarah again before making that decision? Or was it okay for me to prioritize my kids' comfort and well-being? Caring for a loved one with dementia is never easy. Am I wrong for forcing my mom to do activities when she just wants to rest? I, a 34-year-old female, have been caring for my mom, who is 67 and has dementia. She lives with me now, and even though her condition is getting worse, she still has a few good hours every day where she's completely lucid. During those precious hours, I try to make the most of them, but lately I've been getting pushback. Not just from her, but from the hospice nurse as well. And it's starting to frustrate me. To give you some background, my mom was a vibrant woman, always on the go, traveling, shopping, trying new things. So when she has those brief windows of clarity, I want to pack in as much as I can. I feel like I need to savor the moments we have left before the disease completely takes her. But instead of being grateful for all the things I'm doing, she just wants to sit in her recliner, watch her stories, the same soap operas she's been watching for years, and rest. The hospice nurse says I need to respect her boundaries, but honestly, I feel like I should be able to make the most of these good moments for both of us. I mean, I'm the one taking care of her, right? I gave up my social life, my time, and my freedom to make sure she's safe and cared for. So when she's lucid, I feel like it's not too much to ask to spend time doing things that I think will make her feel more alive. I thought it would be fun to do something creative, and I know she used to love art, so I signed us up for a pottery class at a local studio. But when I told her we were going, she flat out refused. She said she was too tired and just wanted to stay home. I had to basically drag her out of the house, and she sat there the whole time looking miserable, barely participating. I try to force her to go for walks in the park. I've heard that staying active is good for people with dementia. So I try to get her out of the house and moving around, but every time I suggest a walk, she complains that she's tired or that her feet hurt. I took her to the park last week and she sat on a bench the whole time while I walked laps around her. She didn't even try to enjoy the scenery or the fresh air. I make her go through old photo albums with me. I thought it would be meaningful to go through old family photos to jog her memory and maybe relive some happy moments from the past. But she kept saying it was too much and that it made her sad. I ignored her and kept flipping through the pages, asking her to identify people and places. Eventually, she started crying and asked me to stop, but I kept going because I thought it was important. The hospice nurse has told me multiple times that my mom still has the right to make decisions about her care, even with dementia. Apparently, that includes deciding how she spends her lucid moments. But I disagree. I'm her daughter. I know her better than anyone, and I feel like I should be able to squeeze every last drop out of the time we have left. How can I sit back and let her waste her clarity watching TV when we could be creating more memories? When I mentioned all this to the hospice nurse, she told me that I was overstepping and needed to back off. She said my mom has a right to rest and watch her shows if that's what makes her happy. I get that, but I feel like that's such a waste of her lucidity. I love my mom, and I just want to make the most of the time we have left, but it feels like no one else understands that. So am I wrong for trying to get my mom to do activities while she's still lucid, instead of letting her spend her time resting and watching TV? Sometimes you have to blame the people who are actually wrong. Am I wrong for not punishing my son for cursing at his younger cousins? I, a 45-year-old woman, have a 17-year-old son, Michael. Last weekend, we were at a family gathering and things got a little tense. My sister's kids, Emma, who is 12, and Jake, who is 10, have always been the type to push boundaries. They're energetic, and while they can be sweet, they tend to get overbearing, especially when it comes to Michael. During the party, Michael was minding his own business, sitting on the couch, when Emma and Jake started poking, tickling, and prodding him. They thought it was funny, but Michael was clearly uncomfortable. He asked them, politely at first, to stop. He told them multiple times to knock it off, but they just wouldn't listen. I was in the kitchen when this started, so I didn't see it right away. Eventually, Michael had enough and snapped, yelling, "Get the fuck away from me!" Afterward, my mother and my sister pulled me aside and told me they hoped I was going to adequately punish Michael for his outburst. They were upset that he used foul language in front of the younger kids, claiming he should know better since he's older and should be setting a good example. But honestly, if anything, I wanted to take him out for ice cream. This wasn't an isolated incident. Emma and Jake have always been over the top with Michael, and this is just the latest example of them pushing his buttons. Here are 3 other times they crossed a line. Last Christmas, they decided it would be hilarious to throw snowballs at Michael while he was inside the house, relaxing by the window. They kept pelting the glass, even after he asked them to stop. Michael finally told them to cut it out, but they just laughed and kept going. My sister brushed it off as kids being kids. At a summer barbecue, they sprayed him with water guns when he wasn't in the mood. He was sitting outside, enjoying the sun, and they ran up, doused him, and kept laughing about it. He told them off that time too, and again, no one stepped in to stop them. During a family game night, they thought it would be funny to gang up on him in every round, ruining the experience for everyone. They kept sabotaging him and ignored all his attempts to ask them to play fairly. Their parents laughed it off and did nothing to rein them in. Every time these incidents happened, I tried to intervene. But it's clear their parents have no intention of disciplining them. I've always been big on teaching Michael about body autonomy and respecting other people's personal space. I don't believe in forcing kids to endure behavior that makes them uncomfortable, and that includes being physically harassed, even if it's by family. Just because someone's younger or a relative doesn't mean they're entitled to disrespect another person's boundaries. Michael tried asking nicely, multiple times, but they didn't listen, and I don't blame him for snapping. If anything, I think he showed great restraint by not pushing them away or reacting physically. He expressed his discomfort verbally, and while the language wasn't ideal, the message needed to be loud and clear. Stop invading my space. I don't think Michael should be punished for protecting his personal boundaries, and I certainly don't think I should force him to apologize for defending himself. It's not like he screamed at them out of the blue. They ignored him repeatedly and disrespected his space. At 17, Michael's learning the importance of standing up for himself, and I'm not going to undermine that by punishing him for a justified outburst. So, am I wrong for not punishing my son and, if anything, supporting his decision to stand up for his boundaries?
Some people do have a sixth sense. Am I the asshole for being a harsh critic of people my friends introduce me to? Okay, so apparently I've earned a reputation among my friends as the harsh critic whenever I meet someone new, and it's starting to cause some tension. It's not like I go around picking people apart for fun, but I guess you could say I'm sensitive to people's vibes. When I meet someone, I can usually tell pretty quickly whether there's someone I want to be around or not. My friends say I'm too sensitive and that I judge people too fast. But here's the thing, I'm not often wrong. The first time this became an issue was with my best friend Debbie. She had a college friend, Amanda, come to visit from out of town, and within minutes of meeting her, I knew we were not going to get along. Something about her rubbed me the wrong way. The way she dominated every conversation and dismissed everything Debbie said as if it didn't matter. Debbie told me I was being unfair and that Amanda was just high energy, but I didn't buy it. Sure enough, by the end of the weekend, Amanda had insulted half our friend group without even realizing it. Then there was the time another friend invited her father to a dinner. Everyone was excited to meet him because she'd always talked about how charming and successful he was. But the moment I met him, I recognized the narcissist vibe. He dominated the conversation, barely acknowledged his daughter, and seemed way too into himself. After the dinner, my friend was upset because I wasn't impressed by him. She thought I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on. Eventually, she opened up to me about the emotionally manipulative behavior he's displayed over the years. But by then, she was already mad at me for pointing out the obvious too soon. It's gotten to the point where my friends actually bring their new dates over to meet me on the first date, as if I'm some sort of litmus test. They joke about it, saying they need my approval, and at first I thought it was funny, but lately it's been biting me in the ass. Like, they appreciate my judgment when it lines up with their feelings, but the second I don't like someone they're into, suddenly I'm too harsh or too quick to judge. I'm not trying to ruin their relationships or make them feel bad about the people they like. I just call it like I see it. I know I can come across as critical, but it's only because I've learned to trust my instincts. And honestly, they've proven right more times than not. Am I really the asshole for being honest and trusting my gut even if it means I don't like the people they bring into our group? Am I the asshole for judging people too quickly, or am I just being realistic?
Sometimes even the best of friends can make a mistake. Am I wrong for stepping between my friend and a stranger who was harassing her? I, a 29-year-old woman, have a friend, Mia, who is 25, very petite and shy. She's also socially anxious, making it even harder for her to deal with unwanted attention. We were walking together one evening when a man started harassing us on the street. He was catcalling her, making inappropriate comments and following us for a full block. Eventually, he walked up to her, put his arm around her, and began to get even more physical. At that point, I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm 6 feet tall and tend to be more assertive, so I stepped in front of Mia, pushed her behind me, and confronted the man directly. I told him to back off and leave us alone. Someone filmed the whole interaction and it went viral the next day. In the video, Mia looks terrified and timid while I come across as aggressive and confrontational. Mia has since told me that causing such a scene probably made the situation worse, and that if I just let it be, the man might have left on his own. She said that my actions drew more attention and escalated the situation, and now she feels embarrassed by the way it all played out. This isn't the first time I've stepped in to protect someone. A few years ago, a different friend, Lisa, who was 27 at the time, was at a bar with me when a guy she had previously rejected was persistently trying to get her attention. He started getting increasingly aggressive and refused to take no for an answer. Lisa was visibly uncomfortable, so I intervened, told him to back off, and escorted Lisa to safety. The guy ended up making a scene, but Lisa was grateful for my intervention. Another time, I was at a coffee shop with my coworker, Jenna, who is 30. Jenna has a visible disability and often faces unkind remarks from strangers. One morning, a man started making derogatory comments about her disability. When he got close and began taunting her, I stepped in, confronted him, and made sure he left the shop. Jenna was upset by the confrontation but was later thankful for my support. In each of these situations, my actions led to a scene, and the people involved often felt uncomfortable or embarrassed by the attention it brought. But my intent was always to stand up for my friends and ensure they felt safe. I've always believed that sometimes making a scene is necessary to protect those who can't protect themselves in the moment. Now, with Mia's situation, she feels that my intervention made things worse and that I should have handled it differently. She says that my actions contributed to the viral video and the negative attention surrounding it. I'm torn because I still believe that stepping in was the right thing to do, especially given Mia's anxiety and the aggressive behavior of the man. So, am I wrong for stepping between my friend and a man who was harassing her, especially when my actions have previously led to similar scenes for other friends?
And that's it for today's collection of Am I the Asshole boundary-breaking stories. Thanks for sticking with us through all the drama, awkward moments, and frustrating situations. Whether you listen to this while working out, riding the bus, sitting in the carpool lane, or even winding down for bed, I hope you found these stories as entertaining as they were eye-opening. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more juicy Reddit stories coming your way. And hey, if you've ever had your own boundary crossed or dealt with someone who just doesn't know how to respect personal space, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep those boundaries in check.